Human concern for privacy can be traced throughout history, and the right to privacy is growing more and more complex, especially today with the advent of cloud technology. To explain, let's imagine we have a social media influencer lady who feels her profile is being followed or stalked, and not in a good way, but a way that invades her privacy. Now, luckily, there is many privacy laws and regulations across the world. Historically, these were human privacy rights, but since the advent of technology and cloud computing, these have moved more towards data privacy. And the two critical underlying foundational laws that govern privacy both in the United States and the United Nations are the following. Firstly, in the United States, this is the USA Constitution, and most commonly the Fourth Amendment. However, the Fourth Amendment is only one of many amendments that talks around privacy. But an important technical keynote, the US Constitution does not explicitly mention a right to privacy, but the Supreme Court has recognized it as a fundamental right rooted in the Bill of Rights, and these are the various amendments, including the Fourth Amendment. And secondly, internationally, the United Nations has established the UN Declaration of Human Rights in 1948, which is an international law for the right to privacy. However, despite these two core laws, privacy is still a major concern. And there have been various laws since these two core foundational laws, but we will discuss those later in the video. But for now, an important technical key takeaway is that jurisdictional variances become evident during cases involving cross-border data requests or cases of contention across these two international and USA laws. And to further complicate matters, even laws within the same country can vary. For example, in the USA, there isn't harmony between all the state laws. And for this reason, privacy legislation, specifically data privacy, has accelerated in recent years. And so it is vitally important to apply due diligence by staying up to date with all the changing data privacy landscape. And bonus CISSP, CCSP exam tip, if you want to learn more about due care and due diligence and the prudent man rule, this was covered in a separate video which I have linked here. But the key takeaway for the purposes of this video is don't just learn the laws in one country, learn them internationally, as international commerce is continuously growing, and therefore understanding cross-data sharing is vitally important, and not just for your CISSP, CCSP exams, but your general knowledge. Now, as mentioned, there are many different laws across the world around privacy. And in this video, I won't deep dive into any of these because I covered these in a separate video which I've linked here in great detail, which I highly recommend you view if not already. And also, please ensure you have liked and subscribed to the channel to ensure you do not miss videos like that in the future. But for the purposes of this specific video, I want to keep this very high level to the privacy principles and processes rather than the specific laws that govern them. And so I thought a good way to explain some of these concepts is to take some common exam questions and answer these using the analogy we described below. So without further ado, let's go to our first question. I will pause for a moment while you read the question. Also, feel free to pause the video yourself. So to answer the question, the process of analysis of how information is handled to ensure that it complies to various legal, regulatory and policy requirements in relation to privacy is known as a PIA, Privacy Impact Assessment. Now, in technical cybersecurity terms, a PIA is often associated with a BIA, Business Impact Assessment. However, in a PIA, the key being the P standing for privacy, and the risks associated with the data, e.g. the destruction, corruption or loss of data for a company. And in terms of our analogy for our influencer lady, imagine her going to the PIA police, who do a privacy impact assessment on how the influencer's data, if leaked, corrupted or lost, can affect her day-to-day privacy. And she might say, "Why does it feel like somebody's watching me?" Now, moving on to our next question. Again, I won't read the question, I'll pause for a moment. And here's the answer. A concept similar to a service level agreement in that it defines roles and responsibilities as well as service commitments around the protection of privacy information between a service provider and a consumer. This is known as a privacy level agreement, PLA. And in the context of our analogy, Imagine that the social media influencer lady contacts her service social media providers, asking for a privacy level agreement PLA, which defines the roles and responsibilities and service commitments from the service provider to try and stop or mitigate the social media weirdos that have infiltrated the social media influencer lady's data and privacy. After all, beauty is a curse, and the social media influencer lady can't have loads of weirdos infiltrating her data. There needs to be some boundaries, and these should be relevant to the laws, regulations, and protections needed to protect her data. And those service provider platforms should put these mitigations in place by law to protect the social media influencer lady's hotness. Oh, yeah. Moving on to our next question, I will pause again. The answer of how an organization can measure their progress against established benchmarks in the privacy world is known as a privacy maturity model, PMM. And like any maturity model, this can have many benefits, such as driving compliance, internal assessments, and also comparisons against established industry benchmarks. And here's a bonus CISSP CCSP exam tip. There are a few different privacy maturity models out there, and some examples are listed on your screen now. And finally, here is a very important technical keynote. Privacy is not, I repeat, not the same thing as confidentiality. That is the confidentiality in the CIA triad. But when talking about privacy, we are talking about a very specific kind of subset of data. This could be personally identifiable information PII, or even personal healthcare information PHI. And if an organization or business holds any of this type of data, then the right to privacy is the individual's right to control their personal information and decide what they share with such business. Whereas confidentiality is an organization's duty to protect that shared information. That is, putting in security controls to protect that privacy data. So think of these as complementary, not competing terms. I hope you found today's video informative and enjoyable. If you did, please be sure to like and subscribe if not already to help support this new channel's growth. And stay tuned for more videos released like this, as well as checking out the other videos on this channel. Thank you for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed the content as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you would like to see more content like this, it would be super fantastic if you could leave a like and subscribe to help support this channel's growth.